Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. You clicked on this video because the thumbnail was "Shut Up and Sit Down, Changed My Life." The reality is, though, it changed both of our lives in an interesting way. I'm here with Jeremy Tracy from Tracy Boards, which is a crokinole board manufacturer, producer, handcrafter. It's, started as a indie thing in the back of your garage.
Right.
And it's now a full-fledged business where you and your family produce the best quality crokinole boards in the industry. Something you can't say, but I can,
but
considering
I like to hear.
I have a collection of them. Now, I'm sure there's other incredible manufacturers, but really your boards are on a professional level, and they are used in professional games across the world.
We are the official board builders for the World Championships.
Yeah. And when we were having a conversation, back when we were talking about you coming down to visit, back when we were getting into the hobby of crokinole, and I was just discussing the community that you have and your own YouTube channel, you offhandedly said the line, "Yeah, man, Shut Up, Sit Down, changed my life." Because I was talking about remembering watching that content right before Quackalope even existed. That's one of the most successful videos on their channel. And I said, that's a conversation, first off, that I thought you should have on your own channel.
Right.
And then when I heard you were coming down to visit, I said, I want to steal that for my platform. Because that's such a cool premise. I'm going to back off now, introduce yourself to the camera, and start diving into that. How Shut Up and Sit Down changed your life.
Yeah.
Because it's a story worth hearing.
Absolutely. And again, Jeremy Tracy, Tracy Boards, very happy and excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm getting to live my dream. This is an example of how it changed my life, because here I am taking a business trip to hang out with cool people and play crokinole. So, but in order to understand the impact it had on my life, I think it's good to understand where I was before the video came out.
Sure. Let's give context to that video. So Shut Up and Sit Down, somewhere around 3+ years ago, released the dedicated review on crokinole. On crokinole as a hobby and a sport.
It was 3 p.m. on June 28th, 2019. Ish.
So and they dove into and praised and talked about crokinole. From their perspective, with the caveats and the nuances. I remember the scene of them complaining about the size of the board and rolling it out from behind a couch. And so that's what we're talking about in terms of what Shut Up and Sit Down did. So continue.
Absolutely.
So before the video.
When the opportunity came for me to start this business, I was trained by a guy who'd been doing it for 30 years, and he wanted to retire, so he took me in a shop and trained me. We didn't have a ton of money, but it was something I wanted to do, and as always, my wife supports me 100%. And I set up a shop in 2 very small rooms in the basement of our house. And I remember a time when I was actually sanding boards out in the carport, because I didn't do any heavy sanding in the house. It'd be too dusty. And then being up in Canada, where the winters get cold, as the winter got closer, I splurged and I dropped $250 on what I call a car tent.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah. So great, but no insulation.
Sure.
So I could go back there and I'd carry the boards back, do the work I needed, and then get them back in the house quick as I could. But what I quickly discovered was that the condensation would build up inside this car tent. And once I get in there working, it would rain inside. So before I would take the boards out, I would go out with a mop and I would mop the condensation off. Like when I say I shoestring to get this started, I shoestringed. So that's where we were. And the interesting thing was I had a part-time job while I was building this. And it got to a point that I went to my boss and I'm like, hey man, if I had just a little more time to put into marketing this great game, I think I could push this to a full-time gig, right? That was the goal.
Sure.
I think if I push. So I had just talked to him about cutting back. He agreed to it. And right before I was set to have even less hours at work, so less security, it was my wife and mine 20th anniversary. So we took a few days and we went to Letchworth State Park in New York. So I know you're not supposed to work while you're on vacation with your wife, but when you run a small business and you're worried about sales,
you never stop.
Right. So a couple of times a day, I would sneak my phone and look and go, there's no orders. I'd say this to myself. I'm not going to stress my wife out with it. But we went 4 or 5 days with no orders right at the time when I cut my safe work in half.
You're saying, I think I can make this the thing I do.
Yes.
And that's cutting corners, pitching pennies, and putting in extra time.
Yes.
Like most entrepreneurial things are.
Yes.
With the hope that it would become a real thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where I am, and I've just cut back, but then we have this wicked dry spell, a few days with no orders, and I'm going, oh crap, did I make a mistake?
Sure.
Like, did I make this step too soon? We're driving home from Letchworth, and we stopped at the mall in Buffalo. And when we stop, I open up my phone and I look, and I'm like, Elaine, this is so weird. We've had 3 orders in the past hour. Like, that's weird. And she goes, I mean, there's always
3
little
friends
spikes.
grabbed it. Yeah,
whatever. All right, so we walked around the mall for a while, about an hour maybe, and sat down for supper. And of course, I opened my phone again, and I'm like, there was 4 more orders something's going on. In the last 2 hours, we've had 7 orders.
It's more than we've had all week.
It's more than a normal week at this point, right? And I'm like, something's up. So it wasn't until I got home at like 11:30 that night that I discovered this Shut Up and Sit Down video had been released.
Okay.
So by this time, I think we've got 30 orders sitting in our inbox.
Sure.
And the way it used to be, like, I'd always have a couple of boards ready to go. We had red boards and black boards. I'd have a couple of each ready. So when somebody ordered within a day or two, if it wasn't done, it'd be almost done, I'd have it shipped out. So I had this system. An order would come in, I'd print it, I'd tape it, stick it on the wall in my shop. Within a couple of days, I get it out. So I continued this same system, but now I've got 40 orders on my wall. So I've got a row of red and a row of black, and somebody would email and go, hey man, when do you think my board's going to ship? And I'm standing down there in the shop looking at the wall going, where's this guy's order even on my wall? At which point my wife stepped in and went, Jeremy, this is a disaster.
Sure.
You need my help.
Sure.
So yeah, it went from that to Elaine, just out of necessity, jumped in and started helping me with the business. And like when that video came out, it basically instantly quadrupled my business. I mean, it took us, and I kept saying, like, what that showed me was our system and processes as they were at that time could not handle this new volume.
Sure.
So I kept saying, once we catch up, I'm going to fix this and this and this and this. Like, surely this is going to taper off after a few days. And it just didn't. And I mean, yeah, it's just kept going. So we now have a 1,600 square foot shop that we rent outside of our house. So I don't have to do any, well, we still sort buttons and whatnot in the house, but we've separated it. Full-time for me, full-time for my wife. I had 2 of our 3 sons working full-time in the shop. One of them has moved on to try something else now, but I need to replace them because there's enough demand that, at this point, the bigger this gets, the less time I spend actually working physically on the boards. I let my sons do most of that work. And
more time you get celebrating Crokinole.
And I get to do things like this. So, I mean, yeah. To say that it was life-changing is a massive understatement. Just the impact it has had, the ability to travel and introduce the game to people is... Well,
shut them down. Did they have a Tracy board? Were they even talking about Tracy board products? No. Do you know what type of board they actually had on hand?
I think, don't quote me on this, somebody can correct me if it's wrong, I think it was from a company called Woodestic.
Okay.
I think. It was a supplier, it was a manufacturer in the UK.
So just by the ambient nature of the conversation around Crokinole skyrocketing, you all got affected by that.
Yep.
Which I assume that means other Crokinole manufacturers and board makers got hit by that as well.
I heard through the grapevine that the site of the company where they had gotten the board to do this review, I heard that their site crashed. And there were days that I wish my site had crashed. Not long term, but like, whew. Because I mean, at that time, I was so uncomfortable making people wait for a board.
Sure.
But I mean, I can work a 20-hour day for a couple of days in a row, but
it'll catch up with you.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was pedal to the metal for months and months in order to handle that. And just incredible, the impact that it had. And I heard that, I mean, basically what I heard was that anybody who was making a quality board, it skyrocketed. And I'm guessing even the lesser quality boards probably.
Sure.
But I remember a lot, like right after that came out, I'd be working away, my cell phone would ring. That's my business phone. And I answer my phone and somebody would say, "Are you the guy that makes the Crokinole boards?" I'm like, "Yes, I am."
"Yes, sir, that's me."
"Is that what you call it?" I'm like, "If you want one, you can call it whatever you want." But yeah, it was just a whole new mass of people that had never even heard of the game before.
Yeah.
Now they knew what it was, and they knew why it was awesome.
What did you think of the review itself? What did you think of the coverage on the product?
Oh, I mean, I watched that video and go, I'm like, I get it. I understand why this guy has the following that he does.
Sure.
I mean, it was a hoot.
Yeah.
I remember my oldest son sat down and watched it. At that time, he wasn't working for me. He was working as a bricklayer. And he watched the video, and as soon as it was done, he goes, that makes me want to play Crokinole. Do you want to play Crokinole, Dad? And I'm like, yes, I do. So Reed and I got to sit down and have a game. But yeah, I think that was the other thing that it did. Not only did it introduce new people, it was all these people that have had Crokinole in the back of their closet for years are like, oh, yeah.
Let's pull that out.
Let's get out that awesome game again for our family get-together or what. Yeah. And yeah.
They do an amazing job at highlighting and showcasing what the experience of a game could be like. And like the best environment possible. And they provide caveats and they give restrictions and they show the board just not fitting comfortably anywhere, which yours all actually mount on the wall, which helps solve that problem in a significant sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and just like the ambient side conversation to this, the reason why I was excited about this conversation is because I don't think I'm alone in being impacted by Shut Up, Sit Down in this hobby. You had a life-changing experience.
Yep.
Quackalope, to a large degree, can be blamed on the fact that I fell into the board game hobby. I was introduced to D&D through Critical Role, started doing D&D, then wanted to find something adjacent to that. And so D&D, I was playing D&D with a group in a board game store. Mm-hmm. Started then by nature playing board games.
Right.
Found Shut Up and Sit Down and started absorbing every piece of content they put out, period.
Yep. And
once I'd hit the bandwidth, and I mean that, I, for a few months, watched everything they put out to date. And I tracked down like their Twilight Imperium, group play and everything like that, right? And once I hit the bandwidth of exhausting their content, I got to a point where I was like, I would like more videos to watch. There are no other videos out there that I'm enjoying as much as these. I have a background in film and media production. Why don't I just start making what I wish was there in the market? And I discovered that I didn't agree with their taste in games across the board on everything, right? Yeah. And so, like, Crokinole is probably one of the only areas that we hard agree on. Whereas, like, a lot of their other games are more approachable party games, experiential games, and I think those games are amazing. I think their coverage is fair, but they didn't fit what I and my gaming group enjoyed playing the most.
Right.
So I was like, let's create content around the stuff that I enjoy in a production style that is watchable, that is viewable, that is a joy to watch. So, like, Quackalope can be partially blamed on Shut Up and Sit Down existing in this platform as well, because they kind of set the pathwork forward for me. And I think there's a lot of people, like, if you're watching this and you're like, they did this the same blah 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 to me, like, leave a comment down below. Let us know how they've impacted you, because for me, it's mind-blowing how directly whether it's through inspiration and through ideas or through just financial, like we're getting sales because of them.
Yep.
It's a mind-blowing how, like, impactful a group or a creator can be in this space.
Absolutely. One of the things that I enjoyed about their review of Crokinole was the honesty of it. Like, at one point he's like, I don't really like doubles. I don't agree with that. I love doubles.
It's probably my favorite way to play.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But there were different things like that he said, but it was just a raw, honest review, and I think I expect that's why people love them. And
so what you're saying is I need to rewatch that review, because it turns out even on Crokinole we disagree.
Okay.
Because if they don't like doubles, that's my favorite way to play this game.
Yeah. Definitely one of my favorite ways. But and I mean, he didn't say, "Oh, double sucks." He was just like, I don't really like it as much. And I mean, I'm going to stroke your ego for a second. From my perspective, the video creators out there are ones like him that are creating. I should say them, because I think it's a whole team.
It's a team of people. Yeah.
They are creating, as far as I know, they are creating extremely high quality, but not as much volume. And then there's people that are creating a ton of volume, but the quality's not there.
Sure.
I mean, we've all watched bad videos, right?
Sure. There's a few.
But I mean, you're doing both. I mean, you pump out a pile of content at a very high quality.
We're trying, and we're always trying to compete with that. I think the low production has its advantages on their end as well, and they're way more entertainment and comedy driven than we are able to be.
Yeah.
But Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's a weird balance. It's like what fits the audience and the channel right, and we're still figuring out what that is for us.
Yeah. And I'm not by any means putting down the other ones.
Absolutely.
I think it's all great content. If it's introducing more people to great games and games that they're not aware of.
Board Game Co. puts out a ton of production with his quality being lower than my preference would be, and you all know I adore Alex, and so it's just this balance of like what the channel itself wants to do, and the most important thing is that like personality is good, video is decent, and the audio is the biggest thing.
Right,
if the audio is unlistenable.
Yep.
No one's gonna watch. Period.
Yes.
But yeah, I just wanted to like pull off to the side and take a moment to ruminate on, on that channel, on Shut Up Sit Down, on the impact that they've had, on that sentence that you said, because I think that's a powerful thing.
So is that one of your goals to have, as a channel, to have that kind of an impact?
Oh, that'd be awesome if we could.
Yeah. When?
Yeah.
When you can.
Yeah. I mean, that, like, being able to take something that is popular but maybe niched,
right,
and have an impact that's to that degree, where we have people in 5 years that are like, my business transformed on the back of that conversation. Yeah. When they weren't even talking about you.
Right.
It's cool.
Yeah. That's what I said. Like, they just talked about the game that drew attention to the game.
Yeah.
Anything that helps build the game is awesome.
Good. I mean, they did a coverage on, I wonder, like, with Go manufacturers and stuff. Like, I've wanted to buy a copy of Go, another board game, ever since they did coverage on it. And I have no idea who the person that, like, they had various different versions of it and higher quality craftsmanship and stuff. So it wasn't about a specific company.
Right.
But in my mind now, I want to buy a copy of that game. I've made a lot of purchases off of things that they've recommended. That's how I've learned that I don't match up with their tastes as much. But I've definitely bought a lot of things just off of, like, their video goes up, great, I'm trying it.
Sometimes, like I say this about podcasts a lot, listening to a free podcast can get very expensive.
Sure.
YouTube, it's supposed to be free to watch videos on YouTube. But you pump out a YouTube video that's free for me to watch, but it makes me go out and spend a few $100. It's not free anymore. But that's cool. Yeah. All right.
Thank you for watching. That's the conversation. I just wanted to sit down and talk and think and share that bit with you all, the audience. Let us know what your stories are, whether or not you've also fallen in love with this hobby partially or particularly due to Shut Up, Sit Down. And let us know. Are you a fan of Crokinole? Do you have a Crokinole board? Or are you still hunting for one?
A better question might be, how many Crokinole boards do you have?
I currently have my Quackalope one. I have one that a Patreon member sent me. I have one that a friend handmade for me without ever having played the game before, just because he thought he could.
Cool. Yeah.
And now I am going to be purchasing a 5-hole from you. Which is another conversation for another day. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. See you next time. Bye.
Quack? Do you throw a quack on the end?
Quack works as well.